Modern academia echoes with a singular, challenging refrain. Complex theories and skeptical headlines flash, each a testament to humanity's relentless quest to dissect, to rationalize, to explain away the divine. Dr. Elias Thorne, a thoughtful historian, observes this prevailing intellectual current, a quiet contemplation behind his eyes. But before the grand theories, before the intricate arguments, there was merely the primal question. Imagine humanity's dawn, huddled under skies ablaze with ancient stars, etching their fears and wonders onto cave walls. They saw the sun rise, the seasons turn, the vast, untamed power of creation and destruction. What did these first thinkers instinctively know? Before dogma, before books, humanity gazed at the infinite and understood, deep within their bones, that something greater orchestrated the cosmos. This was the universal impulse, an innate yearning for meaning beyond themselves, a silent whisper of a creator woven into the very fabric of existence. Centuries later, as settlements grew into sprawling civilizations, that primal question evolved, becoming the foundation of towering cultures. In ancient Egypt, the Nile's cyclical floods were seen as the breath of Osiris. In Mesopotamia, ziggurats scraped the heavens, reaching for gods who controlled destinies. Their astronomical observatories tracked celestial bodies with astonishing precision, not merely for navigation, but to decode the divine order they believed governed their world. These were not primitive fables, but complex cosmologies, intricate religious systems that structured entire societies around divine principles. Did these ancient empires, with all their wisdom, glimpse a truth about the universe's origin that modern intellect has chosen to forget? From the quiet solitude of his university office, Dr. Elias Thorne approaches these ancient beliefs with a scholar's rigorous eye, sifting through the dust of millennia. He cross-references forgotten myths with archaeological data, poring over cuneiform tablets and hieroglyphic scrolls. Initially, he views them as fascinating cultural constructs, reflections of human psychology. Yet, the more he delves, the more he finds unsettling patterns, recurring themes of creation from chaos, divine judgment, a universal flood, and a longing for order. Could these echoes be more than just cultural coincidence? He scribbles in his notebook. What if they are fragments of a singular, profound truth, whispered across ages? Beyond the cosmic order, another thread binds ancient humanity. The innate moral compass. From the brutal battlefields of antiquity to the tender acts of compassion, across diverse cultures, an undeniable sense of right and wrong prevailed. Hammurabi's code, inscribed in stone, laid out principles of justice. Early philosophical texts wrestled with virtue and vice. Despite varied cultural expressions, the core understanding of fairness, retribution, and empathy transcends geography and time. This universal recognition of moral law begs a profound question. Does our collective sense of justice betray a hidden, higher judge, an ultimate standard beyond human invention, or is it merely a convenient social construct? What if the first scientists were actually seeking God, not replacing him? For centuries, humanity had woven elaborate tapestries of myth to explain the sun, the stars, the very creation of their world. But then, a profound shift began to stir in the fertile lands of ancient Greece. Figures like Thales of Miletus dared to ask, what is the fundamental substance of reality? Was it water, air, or an unknowable aporon? Heraclitus sought a universal logos, a unifying principle of reason and order governing the cosmos, while Pythagoras found divine harmony in the mathematics of the universe. These were not mere storytellers. They were the earliest philosophers, the pre-Socratics, who began the arduous, intellectual quest to understand the universe through observation and reason, daring to look beyond the pantheon of gods to find a singular, rational cosmic order. Did Plato's perfect forms accidentally reveal a glimpse of God's blueprint? As Greek thought evolved, a towering intellect emerged, Plato. He gazed beyond the fleeting shadows of our physical world, suggesting a transcendent realm of perfect, eternal forms. For Plato, the world we perceive with our senses is merely an imperfect reflection of a higher, unchanging reality, a concept vividly illustrated in his allegory of the cave, where prisoners mistake shadows for truth. This wasn't merely abstract philosophy, it was a profound spiritual yearning, longing for ultimate, absolute truth, goodness, and beauty that existed independently of human perception. Plato's forms, in their divine perfection and eternality, echoed a search for a non-material ultimate truth, a blueprint for existence itself. Could the father of logic lead us to a logical conclusion about God? Following Plato, his brilliant student Aristotle took a different path. He was a meticulous observer, a scientist who dissected the natural world with unparalleled rigor, seeking to understand reality through empirical study and logical deduction. Yet, even Aristotle, the father of logic and empirical science, arrived at a profound theological conclusion. Observing the endless chain of cause and effect in the universe, he reasoned that there must be a, quote, first mover, an ultimate, uncaused cause that initiated all motion and change without itself being moved. This unmoved mover was pure actuality, the ultimate explanation for existence. Even through the lens of pure reason and observation, the greatest logical mind of antiquity pointed to a divine prime mover. What happens when a modern skeptic finds ancient pagan philosophers echoing biblical truths? In his quiet corner of the university library, Dr. Elias Thorne found himself captivated by these ancient minds. He devoured Plato's dialogues, underlining passages describing the forms, the pursuit of the good. He traced Aristotle's logical steps to the unmoved mover, scribbling notes in the margins. They sought a first principle, he muttered to himself, an ultimate cause, a perfect truth. Elias, trained in modern skepticism, wrestled with the intellectual rigor of these pagan thinkers. He saw recurring themes, a yearning for transcendence that resonated with something deeper than mere cultural construct. Could these insights, born centuries before Christ, be accidental pointers to a transcendent reality? Or was it purely philosophical conjecture? The question hung in the air, a subtle look of wonder slowly replacing his usual academic detachment. Even the greatest human minds hit a wall. Was there a higher source of wisdom waiting to be heard? Despite their monumental intellectual achievements, the brilliant minds of Greece eventually reached the limits of pure human reason. They established the foundations of Western thought, but their philosophies, for all their grandeur, could not fully explain existence, nor provide the ultimate, coherent answers humanity craved. They glimpsed fragments of truth, but the full picture remained elusive, beyond the reach of human intellect alone. On a modern philosophical debate stage, Professor Vivian Reed, sharp and unyielding, presents her confident, purely secular academic view, implicitly arguing that anything beyond human reason is simply unknowable. A stark contrast to the ancient yearning, her voice cuts through the historical echoes, reminding us how easily human intellect can become a magnificent cage, rather than a gateway to ultimate truth. What if God didn't just let us guess, but spoke directly to humanity through chosen voices? While philosophers sought truth through deduction and observation, a different narrative unfolded in the ancient world. In the stark desert landscapes of ancient Israel, amidst the humble tabernacle and later the magnificent temple, a profound and authoritative voice echoed through the ages. Figures like Moses, Isaiah, and Jeremiah emerged, not as speculative thinkers, but as direct conduits of divine revelation. Their words, etched onto scrolls and proclaimed with unwavering conviction, were not theories, but pronouncements. They reshaped nations, foretold futures, and offered a direct, undeniable link to the Creator, utterly distinct from the reasoned guesses of man. Was God's ancient law a primitive code, or a divinely intelligent system far ahead of its time? From the thundering heights of Mount Sinai, God gifted humanity an intellectual and moral framework, unlike any other, the Mosaic Law. This was more than a set of rules. It was a comprehensive blueprint for existence, a societal operating system that brought order to chaos, justice to disputes, and a profound sense of purpose to daily life. Envision ancient Israelite camps, then bustling marketplaces, where every interaction, every legal proceeding, every aspect of community life was governed by principles rooted in divine wisdom. It created a worldview where human flourishing was inextricably linked to transcendent truth. When human wisdom failed, a captive revealed secrets only God could know. What does this tell academia today? Centuries later, in the corrupt splendor of the Babylonian palace, a young Hebrew captive named Daniel stood where human intellect had utterly failed. King Nebuchadnezzar's disturbing dream, the mysterious writing on Belshazzar's wall, these challenges baffled Babylon's wisest men, their accumulated knowledge proving useless. Yet, Daniel, untainted by pagan philosophy and steeped in divine insight, revealed their exact meaning and foretold the rise and fall of empires with terrifying precision. His wisdom, a direct gift from God, humbled the greatest minds of the ancient world, proving that true insight often originates beyond human comprehension. What if the answers to humanity's oldest philosophical questions were hidden in plain sight, in forgotten prophecies? In his quiet university office, Dr. Elias Thorne found himself surrounded by ancient maps and biblical timelines. He began to cross-reference the profound questions of the Greek philosophers, the search for a first principle, the yearning for transcendent forms, the unmoved mover, with the direct revelations of the prophets. A profound realization began to dawn. The divine narrative wasn't just a separate story. It provided a coherent, unifying answer to the very questions the pagans wrestled with. Could these seemingly disparate quests for truth actually be converging? Unified? Elias mused, a spark of understanding igniting in his eyes. The stage is set. Ancient wisdom versus modern intellect. Who will prevail in the battle for truth? Yet, even as Elias felt the profound weight of this ancient wisdom, he knew the intellectual battle was far from over. The seeds of skepticism, present even in antiquity, had grown into towering fortresses in the modern age. A stark, glossy academic conference poster flashed across the screen. Science versus religion, a definitive debate. And there, a fleeting image of Professor Vivian Reed, her sharp, confident gaze, dismissing ancient religious texts as mere myth, revealed the formidable intellectual opposition Elias would soon confront. The chasm between faith and reason was about to become a battleground. Can faith and reason truly coexist, or is one always destined to conquer the other? After the raw revelations of the prophets and the initial philosophical inquiries, humanity entered an era that dared to answer this very question with a resounding yes. Imagine a time when the greatest minds saw no conflict, but rather harmony, between the ancient texts of God and the profound insights of Greek philosophy. This was the age of scholasticism, a grand ambition, a towering cathedral of thought built across medieval Europe. In bustling university lecture halls, adorned with intricate Gothic architecture, robed scholars meticulously debated, wrote, and taught. They sought to unify all knowledge, the divine, the natural, the philosophical, under the overarching truth of God's revelation. They believed that divine wisdom, far from being separate, was the very bedrock upon which all rational inquiry rested, a systematic, reverent pursuit to understand God's intricate design. How did a medieval monk use pure logic to argue for God's undeniable existence? At the heart of this intellectual revolution stood figures like Thomas Aquinas, a man whose colossal intellect sought to synthesize the rigorous philosophy of Aristotle with Christian theology. In his quiet study cell, quill scratching against parchment, Aquinas crafted arguments that would shape Western thought for centuries. He proposed his famous 5 ways to prove God's existence, not through blind faith, but through the very reason God had bestowed upon humanity. From the undeniable reality of motion to the intricate design of the universe, Aquinas meticulously built a logical bridge, asserting that faith and reason were not opposing forces, but two wings on which the human spirit ascends to the contemplation of truth. His work was a profound testament to the belief that the divine was not only knowable through revelation, but also discernible through the keenest human intellect. Could an ancient Jewish sage hold the key to uniting faith and science today? This intellectual quest to harmonize sacred texts with philosophical reason was not exclusive to Christian Europe. Across the vibrant, bustling markets of Cairo, and within the quiet medieval Jewish academies, scholars grappled with similar questions. Maimonides, a brilliant physician and philosopher, undertook his own monumental effort to reconcile the Torah with Aristotelian thought. His seminal work, Guide for the Perplexed, became an intellectual beacon, demonstrating that true faith did not fear rational inquiry, but was strengthened by it. He illuminated how the divine laws were not arbitrary commands, but reflections of an underlying, rational cosmic order. These parallel intellectual endeavors across diverse faiths underscored a universal human need to reconcile the transcendent truths of revelation with the compelling logic of human reason, to bridge worlds often perceived as separate. A modern academic looks back at a time when faith and intellect danced together. What went wrong? Dr. Elias Thorne sat in his office, medieval philosophy texts splayed open, a stark contrast to the digital glow of his modern research. He sketched diagrams, highlighting passages from Aquinas and Maimonides, a wistful look on his face. He admired the intellectual honesty, the sheer rigor of these scholastic giants. They weren't dismissing reason, nor were they diluting faith. They were striving for a unified field theory of existence, where every truth, whether discovered in Scripture or nature, ultimately pointed to God. They built a system so grand, so coherent. Elias mused aloud, his voice barely a whisper in the quiet room. Why did this harmony later fracture? How did we lose such a profound integration of knowledge? The question hung in the air, a historical puzzle that deeply troubled him. Even in their golden age, the cracks were forming. How did human reason begin its divorce from God? Despite the monumental achievements of scholasticism, a subtle, unresolved tension persisted. The grand synthesis, while awe-inspiring, couldn't fully satisfy every intellectual current. There were nascent desires for new methods of inquiry, for a focus solely on what could be observed and measured, subtly pushing against the boundaries of theological authority. It was a fault line, quiet at first, but destined to widen, a crack in a seemingly solid intellectual mosaic. From the cooler, more sterile tones of the future, we hear a brief, dismissive comment from Professor Vivian Reed, her voice sharp and confident. Medieval thought, for all its ambition, was ultimately limited by its dogmatic foundations. The seeds of a new era were already being sown, an era where human reason would seek to establish its own independent authority, gradually preparing for a profound divorce from divine revelation. End. When humanity declared reason its new God, what did it gain, and what did it silently lose? The grand cathedrals of thought that defined the medieval age began to crumble, not from external siege, but from an internal revolution. Emerging from the shadows of dogma and tradition, the 17th and 18th centuries dawned as the Age of Light, the Enlightenment. It was a period of unprecedented optimism, a fervent belief in humanity's capacity to understand and master the universe through its own intellect. No longer would divine revelation hold singular authority. Instead, individual reason and empirical observation became the twin arbiters of truth. From bustling European salons to the quiet glow of coffeehouses, and within the nascent scientific laboratories, a new intellectual order was being forged. The ancient scribe archetype, in countless forms, now turned their gaze inward, believing the greatest truths lay not in ancient texts, but within the human mind itself. This shift was more than philosophical. It was revolutionary, promising progress and liberation, but subtly, irrevocably, severing threads to the divine. Did one philosopher's famous phrase accidentally kick God out of the universe? At the heart of this intellectual earthquake stood René Descartes. Picture him in his study, a single candle illuminating the geometric diagrams scattered across his desk, a mind pulsating with the raw power of thought. Descartes, a figure of the ancient scribe archetype, dared to doubt everything, seeking an unshakable foundation for knowledge. Cogito, ergo sum. He famously declared, "I think, therefore I am." This assertion, seemingly innocuous, was a monumental shift. It placed individual consciousness, the self-reliant mind, at the absolute center of certainty. Knowledge no longer flowed solely from an external divine source, but from the undeniable reality of one's own subjective experience. Though Descartes himself was a devout believer, his radical method of doubt, and his emphasis on individual consciousness as the starting point of knowledge, inadvertently laid the groundwork for a purely secular worldview, where human reason, not divine revelation, became the ultimate arbiter. The universe as a perfect machine. Did science accidentally make God redundant? As Descartes redefined the subjective realm, Isaac Newton, another titan of the ancient scribe archetype, was unveiling the objective universe. At his desk, perhaps observing an apple fall or meticulously charting celestial mechanics, Newton described a cosmos governed by precise, immutable laws. Gravity, motion, time itself, all could be quantified, predicted, and understood through mathematical equations. The universe, in Newton's groundbreaking vision, was a magnificent clockwork machine, perfectly designed and set in motion. This was awe-inspiring, a testament to an intelligent creator who had crafted such intricate order. Yet the very perfection of this clockwork began to diminish the perceived need for constant divine intervention. If the machine ran flawlessly on its own, where did God fit in the day-to-day operations? The theological implications of a self-sustaining universe, while not intended by Newton, gradually, subtly, pushed the divine further to the periphery of scientific explanation. If we only know what we experience, what happens to the unseen truths of faith? This new emphasis on observable facts found its philosophical champion in John Locke, yet another manifestation of the ancient scribe archetype. Locke, diligently writing, introduced the concept of the tabula rasa, a blank slate. He argued that the human mind is born empty, and all knowledge is derived solely from sensory experience. Imagine a child, touching textures, tasting flavors, seeing colors, gradually building their understanding of the world. This empiricism, while a powerful tool for scientific inquiry, subtly undermined the very notion of innate divine knowledge or revelation. If there were no innate ideas placed in the human heart by a creator, then spiritual intuition, prophecies, and direct divine communication began to lose their foundational authority. Empiricism, while valuable, slowly closed the door to spiritual intuition, paving a path where only what could be measured or experienced was deemed real, leaving little room for the transcendent. When reason became God, what did a thoughtful academic like Elias feel was lost forever? Dr. Elias Thorne sat in his office, surrounded by the very texts that had ignited this revolution: Descartes, Newton, Locke, interspersed with modern philosophical critiques. He grappled with the Enlightenment's powerful shift, recognizing its monumental contributions to science and human freedom. Yet, a profound unease settled within him. He traced the intellectual lineage, identifying the precise point where reason, once a servant to truth, began to explicitly exclude divine revelation. As faith became increasingly marginalized in academic discourse, Elias felt a growing sense of intellectual isolation, a quiet lament for what had been forsaken. He ran a hand through his hair, looking troubled. A stark contrast between ancient wisdom and these new arguments on his desk. How, he whispered to the empty room, did humanity become so enamored with its own reason that it forgot its source? The stage was set, not for dialogue, but for direct philosophical attacks on God himself. The grand project of synthesizing faith and reason, so meticulously constructed during the medieval era, was never without its fault lines. But in the Age of Enlightenment, a new intellectual force emerged, not just to question, but to actively dismantle the divine framework. David Hume, an 18th-century Scottish philosopher, wielded a skeptical hammer against the very foundations of traditional theology. Hume argued that all knowledge stems from experience, and our perception of cause and effect is merely a habit of mind, not an inherent truth. If cause and effect were not empirically verifiable, how then could one prove a divine first cause and miracles? Impossible, he declared, for they violated the known laws of nature, laws that were themselves derived from uniform experience. He was tearing at the fabric of supernatural belief, reducing God to an unverifiable hypothesis, a claim unsupported by observable reality. Did he shut the door on faith forever, or just on human understanding? Following Hume's relentless skepticism, Immanuel Kant, the German intellectual giant, sought to rescue morality and, perhaps, even God from the abyss of pure empiricism. Yet in his monumental Critique of Pure Reason, Kant inadvertently imposed new limits on human understanding. He posited a universe divided, the phenomenal world, which we can experience and know through our senses, and the noumenal world, the realm of things in themselves, including God, which lies beyond the grasp of pure reason. God, for Kant, could not be known by intellect alone, but was a necessary postulate for morality, a matter of practical reason and faith. In his attempt to preserve a space for belief, Kant pushed God beyond the reach of scientific or philosophical proof, effectively making the divine unknowable through rational inquiry. Did this genius accidentally make God unknowable, even if he exists? But if Kant had merely limited reason's access to God, Friedrich Nietzsche, a century later, delivered a far more audacious and terrifying pronouncement. God is dead. This wasn't a theological statement, but a cultural diagnosis. Humanity, through its relentless embrace of scientific inquiry and rationalism, had effectively killed the transcendent source of meaning and morality. The implications were seismic. If God was dead, then all traditional values, all objective morality, crumbled with him. What emerged was a terrifying vacuum, demanding that humanity create its own values, its own purpose, giving rise to the Übermensch, the superhuman who transcends conventional morality. The hammer had struck, shattering the stained glass window of a God-centered worldview, leaving humanity adrift in a world of its own making. When a philosopher declared, "God is dead," what terrifying new world did he usher in? At the same time, another powerful architect of doubt, Karl Marx, built his critique from an entirely different foundation, the material world. For Marx, religion was not a divine revelation, but an opium of the people, a deceptive illusion created by the ruling classes to pacify the oppressed. It numbed the pain of exploitation and distracted the masses from their true economic suffering. In his view, the spiritual realm was a mere superstructure, an ideological reflection of underlying material conditions. Humanity's suffering, he argued, was not a result of sin or spiritual estrangement, but of economic injustice. His philosophy irrevocably shifted the focus from the divine to the purely economic, cementing an atheistic worldview where religion was just a human construct designed to control, not a divine truth. Was religion truly an opiate for the masses, or a desperate cry for something more? These intellectual giants, Hume, Kant, Nietzsche, Marx, laid the blueprint for a new worldview, a grand edifice of secular thought. And in the modern academic landscape, their ideas found a formidable champion in Professor Vivian Reed. In a packed university auditorium, Vivian stood, commanding the stage, her words appearing as sharp, confident text overlays on the screen behind her. With brilliant articulation, she wove together the strands of skepticism, rationalism, and materialism, presenting a comprehensive secular worldview as the undeniable pinnacle of human thought. Every argument against a divine creator, every dismissal of revealed truth, flowed from her with unyielding certainty. Dr. Elias Thorne sat in the audience, a furrow in his brow, feeling both intellectually challenged by her prowess and deeply disturbed by the absolute conviction that left no room for the transcendent. Meet the academic who has all the answers, but what if her answers leave no room for God? When truth became just another story, what happened to the search for God? In the modern academic world, the bedrock of objective reality has crumbled under the weight of a powerful new philosophy: postmodernism. Imagine a modern art gallery, a cacophony of abstract designs, fragmented perspectives, and shifting meanings. This is the intellectual labyrinth Dr. Elias Thorne navigated daily. He sat in a university seminar room, surrounded by eager students deconstructing every grand narrative, history, morality, even science, into mere social constructs. The ancient scribe archetype would have recoiled from such intellectual relativism. Elias watched, a quiet unease stirring within him. If every truth was merely a perspective, then what ultimate meaning could possibly remain? This relentless deconstruction, the narrator observed, leaves little room for absolute truth, divine or otherwise, fostering a profound intellectual fragmentation and a creeping sense of meaninglessness. If only science can prove truth, does God instantly become a myth? As postmodernism chipped away at objective truth, another formidable force rose to fill the void: scientism. This is the assertion that only what can be empirically measured, observed, and replicated through scientific method is real or valid knowledge. We see state-of-the-art research labs gleaming with technology, scientific conferences buzzing with confident declarations, and Professor Vivian Reed at the podium, her voice resonating with unshakable authority. She presents complex data visualizations, intricate equations, and irrefutable findings, implicitly and often explicitly dismissing any divine explanation as irrational, pre-scientific superstition. To her, faith isn't just unprovable, it's irrelevant, an outdated relic in the age of empirical certainty. Is faith a divine gift, or just another tool of power, as modern theories claim? Beyond the cold logic of scientism, a torrent of critical theories emerged, each seeking to deconstruct and reframe religion through a lens of power dynamics. In a bustling university classroom, students engage in lively, often intense discussions. Social media feeds display heated debates, framing religious belief not as spiritual truth, but as a construct of control, a tool of oppression. Narrator: faith, once seen as humanity's bridge to the divine, is now often analyzed as a mechanism for societal control, a means to perpetuate privilege or maintain patriarchal structures. These theories, from critical race theory to feminism, actively erode the perceived legitimacy of religious institutions, reducing profound spiritual traditions to mere sociological phenomena. When the academic world demands conformity, what happens to those who dare to question the enlightened truth? Professor Vivian Reed stands at the forefront of this intellectual citadel, her certainty unyielding. In a faculty meeting, her sharp gestures and articulate arguments dominate the conversation, effortlessly dismissing any alternative viewpoints as intellectually unsophisticated or emotionally driven. Elias Thorne sits among his colleagues, feeling the heavy weight of academic conformity. Each confident dismissal from Vivian, each unchallenged assertion of secular supremacy, further marginalizes any religious perspective. He senses the immense pressure to remain silent, to conform, or risk professional isolation. The air around him feels thick with intellectual claustrophobia, as if the very space for independent spiritual thought is shrinking. In a world that claims to have all the answers, a thoughtful academic finds himself asking, what if they're all wrong? As night falls on the deserted university campus, Dr. Elias Thorne walks alone, deep in thought. The glow of distant streetlights casts long shadows, mirroring the growing shadows in his own mind. He questions the ultimate satisfaction, the true explanatory power of these dominant modern theories. Is this truly the pinnacle of human understanding, or a magnificent cage, brilliantly constructed but ultimately confining? A profound unease settles over him. Despite the intellectual prowess and the confident pronouncements, he feels a growing conviction that something essential is missing. a spiritual void that no purely secular framework can ever fill. He looks up at the vast, indifferent stars, a silent question forming in his heart. Is this all there is? The intellectual crisis deepens, pushing him towards a precipice of profound questioning. Even the most brilliant secular theories, those intricate edifices of human intellect, have fatal flaws. What happens when an academic, one who once walked within their very walls, begins to expose them? Dr. Elias Thorne, surrounded by a labyrinth of his own making, notes, diagrams, and texts, both sacred and secular, had reached that precipice. He meticulously traced the threads of postmodernism, finding not liberation, but a self-consuming paradox, a system that deconstructed all truth until it deconstructed its own claim to meaning. Then he turned his gaze to scientism, the assertion that only the empirically measurable holds reality. Elias saw its undeniable power to describe the asterisk how, but its profound, unsettling silence on the ultimate why. Science could unravel the universe's mechanics, but it could not whisper its purpose. A red pen slashed across academic papers, marking logical fallacies, revealing the magnificent, yet ultimately incomplete, picture these worldviews painted. A puzzle piece, once seemingly solid, now revealed a gaping void at its center. When intellect strips away all meaning, when the grand narratives are deconstructed and the divine is dismissed, what's left for the human soul? Elias stood alone in a stark, empty lecture hall, the silence a heavy shroud. He had witnessed the confident pronouncements of his colleagues, the intellectual gymnastics that promised freedom from archaic beliefs, yet delivered only a profound, chilling emptiness. Was this the pinnacle of human understanding? A universe devoid of intrinsic purpose, a life without ultimate meaning? He felt the gnawing ache, the existential hunger that no algorithm or philosophical treatise could ever satiate. The human spirit, he realized, yearns for transcendence, a connection to something larger, something eternal. Intellect alone, in its magnificent isolation, proved to be a magnificent cage, leaving the soul adrift in a sea of quiet desperation, under a fading, indifferent light. But then, from the very bastions of science itself, new whispers began to emerge. Whispers of design in the cosmos. Are academics ready to listen when science itself is now revealing the fingerprints of a creator? Elias devoured the latest findings, the cosmic microwave background, a faint echo of creation, the mind-boggling fine-tuning of universal constants, calibrated with impossible precision for life to exist, the irreducible complexity of biological systems, each a symphony of interconnected parts that defy gradual evolution. These weren't theological arguments, but empirical observations, compelling and irrefutable. As he reviewed graphs and data, a profound realization dawned. These scientific discoveries, far from disproving God, were in fact corroborating the ancient wisdom, echoing the very divine architecture revealed in Scripture. The universe, he saw, wasn't a random accident, but a meticulously crafted masterpiece, revealing a grander artist than any had dared to imagine. After years of doubt, after countless nights spent wrestling with the titans of thought, Elias prepared to challenge the entire academic establishment. Will he be heard or silenced? Late at night, his office became a war room of ideas. Texts, both ancient and modern, lay open, their pages highlighted, cross-referenced, and debated within his own mind. He typed furiously, his fingers dancing across the keyboard, translating millennia of wisdom into a coherent counter-narrative. Every argument Professor Reed had ever made, every secular dogma he'd encountered, was met with a devastating clarity. His presentation would not merely critique, it would offer a compelling alternative, one that integrated ancient wisdom, divine revelation, and the very scientific insights his colleagues championed, revealing the explanatory power of faith where reason faltered. It's time to speak the truth, he thought, his resolve hardening, even if it means standing alone. The moment had arrived. The air in the grand, circular lecture hall crackled with anticipation. Elias stood on stage, bathed in the spotlight, PowerPoint slides illuminating the profound journey of his intellect behind him. This was the pivot, the culmination of his arduous quest. "We have mistaken the map for the territory," he declared, his voice clear and resonant. "The instrument for the source." He acknowledged the immense, undeniable value of human reason, its brilliance, its capacity for discovery. But then, with unwavering conviction, he emphasized its ultimate limitation. Reason, though a magnificent lamp, could not illuminate the path alone. It was incomplete, fragmented, without the transcendent framework of divine revelation. In the audience, Professor Vivian Reed sat, her usual confident smirk replaced by an unreadable, yet undeniably attentive, expression. The puzzle piece, once missing, was now presented, completing a grand, unified picture. What if the greatest scientific minds were actually driven by faith? Elias reveals the hidden history of discovery. Dr. Elias Thorne stood before the grand lecture hall, the spotlight illuminating his earnest face, a stark contrast to the initial skepticism he carried. His voice, now resonating with conviction, cut through the lingering tension. "We have been told that intellect and faith are warring factions, eternally locked in conflict. But what if that is a lie?" He paused, scanning the faces, some still wary, others leaning forward, captivated. True intellect, when humbly submitted to divine truth, does not diminish. It expands. It leads not to a narrower understanding of reality, but to one infinitely richer, more coherent, and breathtakingly profound. On the screen behind him, images flashed. Copernicus, whose heliocentric model, though initially controversial, was born from a deep conviction in God's orderly universe. Kepler, mapping the celestial dance with mathematical precision, believing he was thinking God's thoughts after him. Newton, who saw gravity not as an end to God, but as proof of a divine architect. These giants of reason, Elias continued, were not afraid of God. They sought him in the very fabric of creation, believing that the universe, meticulously crafted, would reveal its creator. His vision was clear. An academia where every discovery, every theory, every quest for truth ultimately served to illuminate the boundless wisdom of the divine. Even the most hardened skeptic can't ignore the truth. Did Elias's words finally pierce the ivory tower's armor? The air in the lecture hall crackled with a potent mix of reactions. Some academics, entrenched in their secular fortresses, shifted uncomfortably, their faces etched with dismissive disdain. They had heard such arguments before, quickly categorizing them as antiquated or naive. But others, particularly among the students, were visibly stirred, their expressions reflecting a dawning wonder, a hunger for the integrated truth Elias presented. A few even had tears in their eyes, recognizing a resonance with their own unspoken spiritual longings. And then there was Professor Vivian Reed. Her usual confident smirk was absent, replaced by an uncharacteristic stillness. She sat in the front row, arms crossed, but her gaze was fixed, not on Elias, but inward. Her sharp intellect, accustomed to dissecting and demolishing, was now grappling with a different kind of coherence, a narrative that, despite her every logical defense, seemed to answer questions she hadn't realized she was asking. A flicker of doubt, or perhaps a spark of genuine curiosity, danced in her eyes, a rare crack in the unyielding certainty of the ivory tower. What if every discovery, every theory, every quest for truth is actually leading us back to God? From the earliest pages of Genesis, humanity sought meaning. From the primal questions under starry skies to the grand inquiries of Greek philosophers and the scholastic syntheses of the medieval age, the yearning for ultimate truth persisted. The journey of knowledge is not a linear march away from God, but a winding path that, in its ultimate destiny, leads directly back to Him. For it is written that in the final days, all true knowledge, whether scientific or philosophical, will not merely converge, but will be understood in the blinding, beautiful light of God's truth. Imagine a cosmic library, vast beyond human comprehension, where ancient texts and modern research papers, scientific equations and spiritual revelations merge seamlessly into one grand tapestry. It is a future foretold, where the deepest mysteries of the universe unfurl, revealing the meticulous design of the Creator. Just as nations will journey to Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, so too will every discipline of knowledge ultimately bow before the divine architect, illuminating his glory. This is the enduring hope, the prophetic promise, that all seeking, all inquiry, all wisdom will eventually find its source, its purpose, and its ultimate destiny in the heart of God. After facing the greatest intellectual challenges, Elias has a profound message for anyone seeking true wisdom. Now, sitting here in my quiet office, surrounded by the very texts that once fueled my skepticism and then ignited my conviction, I reflect on this journey. My own path, from a historian grappling with ancient myths to an academic challenging modern dogma, has been one of profound transformation. I once believed human reason was the highest authority, that science alone held the keys to all truth. But I have found that while reason is a magnificent instrument, it is not the source. It is a lamp, but not the light itself. The peace, the coherence, the ultimate explanatory power I sought in every philosophy and scientific theory, I found not in dismissing faith, but in embracing divine revelation as the foundational truth upon which all other knowledge could be built. So to you, watching this, I ask, are you willing to question your assumptions? Are you brave enough to pursue truth holistically, beyond the confines of popular consensus or academic trends? Seek, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be opened. For true wisdom awaits those with a humble and inquiring heart. The battle for truth continues, but the ultimate victory is already written. Where do you stand? The ivory tower may still cast long shadows, but a new dawn is breaking. Across university campuses, in quiet studies and bustling lecture halls, the seeds of a restored wisdom are being sown. Students and scholars, once content with fragmented truths, are beginning to look beyond the purely material, recognizing the profound limitations of reason without revelation. The enduring nature of God's truth, woven into the very fabric of existence and articulated through His divine word, cannot be silenced or dismissed forever. It stands, immutable and eternal, waiting to be rediscovered by a generation hungry for true meaning. The battle for the mind is far from over, but the ultimate victory is already written. Where do you stand in this unfolding story? Do you see the signs of this restoration in the intellectual landscape today? Leave your thoughts in the comment box below. And if you'd like us to keep exploring how current events and intellectual movements connect with biblical truth, give this video a thumbs up and share it. This lets us know we should continue uncovering more profound connections, unfolding right before our eyes. And if you're ready to dive even deeper, click right now on the video you see on your screen, Elias's full lecture on the integration of faith and reason. In these times, understanding is more essential than ever. Blessings.